Hello, this is Brian. Today is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022, and I'm here in East Shepherd's Canyon in the Tierrasanta neighborhood of the city of San Diego. Today I want to present a spotlight on trees. And today's episode is on the Gooding's Black Willow. Sometimes just known as Black Willow, a lot of times just known as Gooding's Willow. And it's this tree here. This is Salix gooddingii. So, Gooding's Black Willow is a winter-deciduous, small to sometimes medium, sometimes fairly large tree. Winter-deciduous, shedding its leaves in autumn, leafless in winter, getting new leaves in the spring. And being that it's a willow, it's a member of its namesake family, the Willow Family, the Salicaceae. So, Gooding's Black Willow is a locally common to sometimes very abundant tree that grows near water courses or where there's underground water, especially in riparian sectors like what we have here in East Shepherd's Canyon. So it is one of several species of willow that grows here in Southern California. And it is usually found in lower elevation canyons, usually below 5,000 feet. I don't think I've seen it above 5,000 feet yet. Usually below that, usually well below that actually. This is more of a lowland, small to sometimes quite large tree again that resides mostly on the coastal sides of Southern California. And it can be quite a luscious, vigorous, thickly vegetated tree. And that is the evidence of either surface or undersurface water that allows these trees to garner such leafy vegetation. So sometimes they can be kind of shrubby thickets, sometimes low growing, and then sometimes very upright and erect. So we're going to look at the leaves of Salix gooddingii, and usually the leaves are quite narrow, slightly curved, lanceolate, with toothed edges, as you can see here. The leaf buds are very small, very hard to see. You have to really look closely, but at the base of the leaf petiole or leaf stalk, you'll see a small, narrowly pointed, brownish colored bud. So these leaves are kind of medium green, not extremely shiny, a little slight sheen to them, and usually quite similarly colored on both sides of the leaves. Twigs are quite narrow and yellowish color, fading to a grayish bark on the upper branches, which eventually becomes quite thickly furrowed lower down on larger branches and tree trunks. So this is the bark of Salix gooddingii, not unlike a lot of the other willow species. So for the novice plant connoisseur, there will need to be some attention paid to whether you're looking at one species of willow or another, because there are willows with very similar features. Arroyo willow, red willow, and Pacific willow are three species that could potentially be confused for a person not very well versed in our local willows. But usually the way I look at it is the leaves that are not very shiny, the leaves that are mostly dull, light to medium green, narrow, not extremely long, but longer on more vigorous branches. So this is a fairly typical size for a Gooding's willow leaf right here. And then during the springtime and early summer, when the leaves are really expanding and the twigs are growing, a lot of times there'll be a little ring around the base of the leaves called a stipule. It's kind of like a little leafy structure that wraps around the twigs sometimes on these. It's not all the time, but quite often you'll see them, and that's common on a lot of other willow species as well. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into that because it's pretty much not a very distinguishing characteristic of this species. But so you can see this one here, a lot of times these willows grow very much with a lean in their trunk. As you can see here, this one grows with a very big lean, so it's like partially upright but grows with a big lean on the trunk. That's a very common feature on Salix gooddingii. That's a characteristic on a lot of our willows, in fact. So that's one thing to look out for. However, Gooding willows tend to be one of the tallest species of willows found here. So I'm coming up to one here that's probably about 45 feet tall, which is definitely well within the growth habit of more erect trees. This one here, this is a good Salix gooddingii. That's probably about 45 feet tall, maybe 45 feet tall. A lot of times they'll be single trunked, but it's definitely not out of the question for them to be multi-trunked as well. So this is one of the taller species of willows we have here in Southern California. So again, medium green colored leaves, and these will be shedding off pretty soon as we're going through fall, but willows usually tend to be late shedders. So this tree will probably be coloring through the month of November, as we're just entering now, and in December, and then by January, late December or January, they should be pretty much leafless. They do take a while. Now, they can develop some fairly decent fall color. They have been known to change a pretty respectable yellow come late autumn here. So yellow fall color is not out of the question. So during late fall, especially later November and into December out here in warmer Southern California, they can put up a pretty festive display. That's why it's good to have willows in your habitat. Now, I'm going to be passing by another population of them here. So they usually grow in these little canyon bottoms, along rivers, on the shores of ponds, and a lot of times wherever there's an underground water spring or an underground stream. So there's usually a seasonal flow in this canyon, which usually goes underground during the dry season. And that's what allows these willows to do quite well here. So this one's got some slightly larger leaves right here. So what other species of willow could this be confused with? Well, I just mentioned several of them. So let's do a little contrast. There's another species of willow that is probably the most common willow you're going to find here in California. And it's this one here, the arroyo willow. This is Salicaceae. Right here. Let's look at the difference in the leaves. Not as narrow. See here, not as narrow. And also not as sickle shaped. As you notice, these ones here had a little bit of a slightly sickle shape, kind of like a eucalyptus shaped leaf a little bit. See here, this one's a little sickle shaped. Kind of has a little lean or a curve to it. Arroyo willow can occasionally get a little bit of that, but it's usually not as noticeable. The tops of the leaves are a darker green, and the undersides are whitish with some light pubescence. So this is a arroyo willow, Salicaceae. And another difference between that is the stature, the height of the willows. Gooding's willows, much more upright trees, much more tree-like. Actually, they're pretty much trees. Okay, let's put it that way. Whereas arroyo willows tend to be large, thicket-forming shrubs, typically. And the buds on arroyo willow are a lot fatter, a lot easier to notice You can see the leaf buds are a lot thicker, a little more rounded, a little juicier. And the twigs are a little thicker too. The twigs, you can see the twigs are a little thicker on Arroyo Willow. And the twigs, the upper twigs on Gooding's Willow are very skinny, very narrow. And Arroyo Willow leaves tend to be thicker as well, thicker, the leaves themselves. So we're along this little riparian corridor, and these are a lot of younger Gooding's willows. Now they can be very much multi-trunk too, because they are subject to the damaging effects of floods. And a lot of times floods are what get willows going and get willows to reestablish themselves. As you can see here, your typical willow is going to have, your typical Gooding's willow is going to have one, sometimes two main trunks, sometimes a little bit more, but usually they're, you look at them, you think this is a tree, not a shrubby thicket. They can be thickets when they're repeatedly disturbed. But then again, here you go. And they're typically more upright than your Arroyo Willow. Another species of willow with which this can be confused is red willow. I've done a video on red willow. The thing about red willow is the tops of the leaves, the leaf shapes are very similar on red willow. I wish there were some red willows here for me to contrast them with. But red willow leaves are usually significantly larger. They have a major color difference between the top and the bottom. The bottom is usually whitish. The top of the leaf is usually quite shiny. And the leaf buds, while similarly shaped, are larger and pointier, more noticeable on red willow, Salix livigata. And then another species of willow that has similar leaves is Salix which is typically more of a tree as well. Salix lasiandra and Salix livigata tend to be more tree-like, just like the Gooding's willow. But the Pacific willow, Salix lasiandra, has more rounded buds as opposed to pointy buds. So that's how you can kind of tell the difference between them. And I believe Pacific willow, Salix lasiandra leaves are a little bit larger. Another plant that this might be possibly confused with in more amateur botanists is mule fat. Here, Baccharis salicifolia, subspecies salicifolia. Difference is the twigs are gummier. The shrub is evergreen. It keeps its leaves all year round. And it gives off a very strong aromatic creosote bush-like smell. And is not related. It's in fact in the sunflower family. And it's a thicket-forming shrub. So, yeah, we do have some fairly nice Gooding's black willows here. San Diego, Southern California, lower foothills of mountains and canyons. Beautiful tree. Beautiful tree. Really glad to finally do a spotlight video on this tree. For some reason I just hadn't got to it yet, and now today was the time to finally get into it and show some love for yet another one of our fine species of willows that make some of the areas in our typically very dry climate look actually quite lush and jungle-like. So that will basically do it for my spotlight on Salix gooddingii, the Gooding's black willow. Live from here, beautiful East Shepherd's Canyon, Tierrasanta, San Diego. Thanks for watching. Be sure to catch the next episode of Spotlight, coming soon.